Yeah, that's the biggest challenge also as the CE of this team, which is really rapidly changing environment. It is actually making sure that people within the team see the opportunity that offers, making them see that work will be done differently. People in the team, it's not like we want to sack people or have less people. We'll just be able to get so much more work done with the people that we've got on the team. We'll be able to accelerate that. And it's up to us to actually embrace it, to see it as an opportunity, to not see it as a threat, to not kind of like, oh, I'm afraid of this. And that is actually the role of us as a leadership team, as he is getting our people excited about this and getting to them to embrace that. And that's one of those things that does keep me awake at night. How can I make sure that we act fast enough, that we're not being left behind? We have the scale. If we then amplify that with AI agents, imagine how fast we can go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Ways to Wealth. Today we have Lisbeth Jacobs, the Chief Executive at Gallagher Animal Management, who has a long and illustrious career across all sorts of industries, which we're going to get into today through research. Lisbeth has a PhD and she has worked in many different industries, R&D, venture capital, education, and now the tertiary industry. No, not the tertiary industry. And now the what is it called? The primary industry. And we hope to learn a lot from Lisbeth today. So I've tried to do you justice in the intro, but if you give us the too long didn't read on kind of who you are and what you're doing today, and then we'll jump into the episode.
Okay, thanks, Charlie. Thanks for having me as well. So, yes, you've given me a good intro. So, I'm Lisbeth Jacobs. I'm currently the CEO of Gallagher Animal Management. I am actually a Belgian, and I ended up in New Zealand through marriage, as so many of us foreigners have done. So, I've met my husband in 1989, well before you were born, Charlie, in Denmark on holiday. And then since then, moved here in 91 for a bit while I was studying. Didn't really like it enough at that time to stay, went back to Europe. Eventually, we did get married in 95, came here after we got married, made my PhD here, moved back in 99 back to Europe together. We started our family in Europe, worked there for about 10 years before I then had the opportunity to take up an expat assignment with the multinational I was working for in China. And that was a really great opportunity that luckily my husband, my Kiwi husband, was willing to put his own career on hold for. So we jointly left for China with the 3 kids in tow. They were 6 and 8, so we've got 3 daughters, twins who were 8 at the time, and a 6-year-old.
Wow.
Moved to China and then worked and lived in China for some time. I was heading up R&D and technology for a steel cord and steel wire multinational out of Shanghai. After that, we decided to come back to New Zealand because the kids were about to start high school. We thought that would be a good opportunity for them to get to know the other half of their heritage, and so to put some roots down in New Zealand. So we did that, and so we've been here since 2012, and I've had a variety of roles since coming back.
It's there's a lot going on there. So you kind of met your partner traveling in Denmark, and you guys were together for some time, but you were both quite ambitious, I'm guessing, and had kind of a lot going on in your careers, a lot of opportunities. So how was it in terms of kind of when you first kind of started that partnership? Obviously, a partnership like a marriage is more intense than a business relationship, but they have so many similarities, and you've got to often do things by design in order to make it work. So um, how was that kind of, given that you guys traveled a lot afterwards? What were the kind of conversations that you guys were having? What were some of the dreams, perhaps?
Yeah, I don't. I actually don't believe that a lot of life happens by design. I think I actually think that life happens very often. It's not luck necessarily, because you have to actually create the conditions to be lucky in. But all you can do is make sure that you're well set up to take advantage of the opportunities that do pass or come on your way. But you never know when an opportunity is gonna come by. Life is in that sense a lot of luck, and it is also then a lot of willingness to take some risk, because hindsight is a great thing. If you look back at our life and at my career, you could think that all of that was done by design, but actually I can assure you that most of that was actually creating. You work hard, you try to do a good job at what you do, and then when opportunities come by, you look at that, and the only decision you can take in that moment is, do I take that opportunity and I go off from this path, which will take me in one direction, or don't I? And do I wait for the next opportunity? But you never know when the next opportunity will arrive, or if there will be a next opportunity. So one of my ex bosses, he was my boss early on in my career. He told me two things. One of the things he told me about that I said to him, I've been so lucky that I had these opportunities, like the big
Right.
corporate I was working for. I was able to make quite a few steps in my career that I thought were quite amazing. And I said, God, gee, I'm so lucky. I feel so fortunate. I'm so lucky to be able to steps. And he said, no, 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 no. You forget that you've made your own luck. We've got this saying in Flemish. I told him, I have fallen with my butt in the butter. So it's a Flemish saying.
Right.
And it means I have been really lucky. And he replied to me and he said, yes, but don't forget, you first created your own butter. Um,
Right.
to fall into. So
Yeah.
that's the one thing he taught me. And the second thing he taught me was, when I talked to him, I said, oh, there was another opportunity, and I wasn't quite sure. It was moving from technology into HR, which for an engineer, a PhD in engineering, is a very unusual move to make.
Mm.
We're putting up a global function in HR for this multinational, really international, really a big senior role. Uh, should I do that? Because then I'm kind of moving away from the technology side of things. And he said, look, that is a decision you need to make, but you need to always reflect on the fact that opportunities will come past you like a train. You decide if you jump on the
Mm.
train or
Right.
not, but you never know when the next train will arrive. Um, and I jumped, by the way, and I took that opportunity and moved into HR. And I did move back into the technology space and into general management. So it's kind of like, I don't believe everything happens by design. I think
Mm.
you can create the conditions to be lucky in, and to be able to take opportunities when they come, but you don't really dictate when those opportunities arise. That's my
Totally. No, totally. That aligns. We have a saying in our company that's live to trade another day, and I think that it also kind of talks to being in the game so that you can be lucky. If you're not in the game, you can't. But you're not in a position to
yeah.
take those opportunities, or you're not able to kind of use any of those serendipitous moments where something kind of comes up out of nowhere and kind of creates a new path, or uh, I guess accentuates the current path. Because obviously some people also come into your orbit, and then they and if it might be your business or whatever, and that kind of takes you to a new level. What do you feel like the challenges were, or how did you do you feel like your background in science? Actually, I should take one step back. At what point did you know that you wanted to study the sciences, and like you wanted to be focused on engineering rather than maybe more soft skills? And I already have a bias towards this, but I guess it served you, having that first principles kind of approach has probably served you even through less technical roles.
Yeah, and I think I'm a little bit of an anomaly again. I always wanted to study law until a couple of months before the start of university. And the reason why that changed is that I had this gap year in between finishing my high school and the start of university, where I went away with American Field Service. It's this exchange program where, as a as a last, after you finish your high school, you can, you know, you can be selected to go and live in another country for a year and redo your high school year. And I was lucky enough to get onto that program, and I was put into the Dominican Republic. So from Belgium, I finished my high school. I chose the Dominican Republic and to go there for a year. And so I did that. And what happened when I was in the Dominican Republic was that I wasn't quite um, careful enough and attuned to the fact that I couldn't just eat and drink everything that I would be able to buy on the street. And coming from Belgium, which is actually quite a clean, safe country, I know that my host family told me, don't buy food at a food stall on the street, or don't drink ice cubes in your drink because you'll get sick. And I did that anyway, and I ended up getting quite ill, and I had to come back early because my parents in Belgium said, like, right, this is it. I was 18. You're clearly not learning not to do all of these things. So you're coming back home. And it's in 1988. So that's before the internet, mobile phones. They were, and it was quite a big step from Belgium to the Dominican Republic, quite a third world country at the time. So I had to come back in the middle of the year. And so obviously university had already started. And what was I going to do with that half year that I was back? My parents did not like me to just sit down and do nothing, nor did I, by the way. And my dad had actually studied engineering, and he had done Latin and Greek at high school. And in order to get into the engineering degree in Belgium that you need to do an entrance exam for, standard, he actually had to do a year of mathematics. And so he had done that year of mathematics and gone on to do the engineering degree, the master's in engineering. And he said, hey, actually, a great idea for you would be to at least study a little bit. Why don't you do half a year of mathematics? You can just jump into that year in the middle. It's not university, it's not high school, but at least you're learning something. So, oh, yeah, why not? That sounds like a great idea, because I had also not done a lot of maths in my high school. I had done Latin, I had done Greek, I had done sciences, but not enough maths to pass the entrance exam for engineering. And I was going to do law anyway. So I did that year of mathematics. I really loved it. And that's what changed my mind. Like a month before the start of university, I had to do the entrance exam. I said, well, given I've done this half year of maths, let's try the entrance exam. We'll see if I pass. I passed. And then I said, well, now that I've passed, and a lot of other people don't, why don't I just do engineering? And again, that's actually how I ended up in engineering. And I like it because the similarity with law is that it is about logical thinking. It's about analyzing things, thinking logically through something, analyzing a problem, developing an analytical solution. And, it's the dissecting of, what do you have here? What's the problem at hand? How do we work through that logically? And like the engineering degree in Belgium is quite as hands-on as in New Zealand. So we wouldn't get our hands dirty a lot. It's a lot more math, science, a lot more
Theoretical?
a lot more theoretical. And I ended up liking that kind of just be logical,
Yeah,
Look
for sure.
forward to work through this logically. I quite like it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool. And then fast forwarding a bit then, um, when you got the opportunity to work in China, where were you based?
In China. So in China, I was based in Jiangyin, which is 2 hours north of Shanghai. But because of the three kids who needed to go to an international school, and Jiangyin is a third tier Chinese city, didn't have any international schools. We lived in Shanghai, and my husband and the kids were living in Shanghai, but I had a car and a driver, because we were not allowed to drive in China. It was a little bit too dangerous. So I would leave on a Monday morning to Jiangyin and spend my week in a hotel in Jiangyin, work from there, and come back on a Friday night to Shanghai. So that's
Ah.
the life we
And and that lasted for how long in total? It was
a
like
couple of years, just 2 years.
couple of years. And did the kids pick up Mandarin or Cantonese, or
Oh, it's
not at all? Because they're Mandarin. So yeah, because they were at an international school, so I'm guessing there was primarily English spoken. So
Yeah. Yeah, and they all had to take an hour of Mandarin a day, so picked that up very quickly, but a lot quicker than I did, I can assure you. but then they lost it very quickly. I mean, we moved out when they went to high school, and they can still count and do a few bits and pieces, but it's easily gained at that age, but it's easily lost as well. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And when you guys came back to New Zealand, obviously you did did a PhD in Auckland, prior to obviously major parts of your career, especially with this large Chinese company. But what was your first role in New Zealand? And you landed here, and then what was was there a plan? There wasn't a plan. It was just
No, well, there was a little bit of a plan. Yeah, yeah. So we decided in China for the kids as well that we really wanted for them to be able to ground themselves at high school level. And for me, it was also at that time in my career, I'd been with Big Hat, which is a multinational. It wasn't a Chinese company, but global company with activities in China. I had been with him for 14 years in different roles. That I was either gonna stay, um, and and probably I was 42 at the time, and was probably potentially not gonna leave and continue my career with them, which is good. I've got a lot of ex colleagues that are still there, and they've been with them for a long time. It's a company with a lot of opportunities. Or we were gonna go back to New Zealand, give our kids a little bit of exposure to that other home country of theirs, and for Andrew then to pick up his career again, coming back to New Zealand, which he had put on hold for a few years to go to China, and then for me to kind of dive in and see what I could do in New Zealand. And that was, in hindsight, actually a crazy move because I lived Big Hat. I had a beautiful career with them. um, I loved the job. Baker doesn't have anything in New Zealand, so I couldn't transition with them to New Zealand. They don't have anything in Australia nor New Zealand. And so it was really for me a jump into the deep end. Um, but in hindsight, and when I think back, how on earth did I think that was a good idea at the time? But I'm really glad that I did, because in hindsight, it opened me up to a whole new um, a career and a look on life and a look on jobs. And in Belgium, a lot of people are a little bit more fixed on starting big multinational and staying with them for their lifetime. That's also a little bit. I thought, look, I could have easily stayed with them for life. Didn't, came back, and then Andrew immediately jumped into a job. I closed things down in China. I put everything in a container. I mean, Big Art actually was kind enough. I mean, they didn't have to, but they shipped everything all the way to New Zealand for us. I'm still really, in touch with them. I actually met an ex-colleague who was here traveling in New Zealand this weekend. Um, and yeah, as it happens, so we moved here and I said, right, what am I going to do? And so I had never had to look for another job since I graduated. So that was the first time. I had some connections still from when I was doing my PhD here. And through coffees with various people, I ended up having a coffee with Andrew Hamilton from the Ice House. We had a coffee, and because people had told me he's really connected. He'll be able to tell you, who to talk to and what you can do. And he said to me when we had this coffee, he said, "Oh, I think you've got great, great experience. Why don't you come and work at the Ice House?" I said, "Well, what kind of jobs do you have?" He said, "Well, I don't have one, but I'll make one for you. It gives you time to look around and get to know the lay of the land, and we can tap into some of your expertise." And that's what we did. And we were brainstorming over a coffee, like, what are we going to call you? And I think my title became Director of International. And I worked on a framework for owner managed businesses on how to internationalize their business. What is important if you want to do business offshore? And so we created a business of international quality framework with an online tool. We created some programs, the owner manager experience. All of these things still exist now, which I'm really proud of. Still in touch with some of his ex-colleagues, and that's what I did for a year and a half, which was fantastic. Yes.
and then you got involved with Archangel, and I'm guessing that you probably did that as because you were at the Ice House, so they're highly connected. So while also taking on a number of appointments, board appointments, and stuff in different kind of roles that were kind of, I guess, connected to some of your experience in engineering?
So I got involved with some startup type businesses via the Ice House, but also Wellington Drive Technologies. Came I mean, knocked on my door. People that I got to know via the Ice House, again, very well connected entity in the Auckland startup scene and tech scene, and then got involved with some of those more governance roles, which again was great to give me an insight in what was happening in the tech space. And then obviously there was a headhunter who rang me to talk about that role at Uni Services, heading up the international part of Uni Services, so taking tech and consulting, etc., from the University of Auckland offshore, and that's where I worked across the health space and the engineering space and also the education space. But all the contracts or the team I was managing were outside of New Zealand or Australia. Got involved in Saudi Arabia with a big contract, with Nestle in the food space, which was very new for me, but again very science based. And I did that for 5 years, which was great, which was excellent. Yeah.
So, it's actually like New Zealand's such an interesting place around, I guess what I'd call deep tech and hard sciences, because obviously the university produces a lot of IP alongside people, and then there's a lot of investment through the Ice House and that sort of scene that helps fund startups in the primary sector that are connected to sciences, but also just in the medical arena, etc. And it's such a hard game. Do you have any, like, I don't know, do you have any kind of insights around that space and, like, how, the success stories have made it easier? Because you need so much capital and there's so much unknown. The cone of uncertainty is so wide, especially in the beginning. It's very different to software, which is, I think, a much easier game to play. So, how have you seen it done well? Because, often these projects are so capital intensive. Like, what are your kind of 3 top kind of, characteristics of, a project that someone has ran maybe even from university and has actually managed to scale that into commercial use and actually a, success story?
Yeah, well, I don't think it's necessarily, these three steps or these three bullet points will be sweet, but there are some learnings from the things that I've seen over my career, and it's typically um, when we're looking at startups and the really really early startups, I think a lot of the strength or the early success. I'm not saying that if you have this, you will be successful, but what I can say is if you don't have this, you're probably not going to be successful. Um, it's the reverse logic, and one of them is um, what we've seen is that individual founders, people who think they can go it alone by themselves, um, what we've seen over and over again is that fails. They need to be able to build a team, a small team, a couple of friends, two, three, that get together and that tackle that problem together. So from where we're sitting at Gallagher, we do make investments in early startups and early stage companies. That is always the number one thing we look at. We will not invest. And we have made the mistake of doing that, knowing that it was probably not a good idea. But because we love to tick so much, we said, we'll put this rule to the side and we'll do it anyway. And we've regretted it. You have to invest in at least a team of two, because that is the first test for the founder inventor. Can he at least work together with one more person? You know? And so that's one of those things. If you have a strong, even if it's just two people or three people that together can drive the venture forward, you've already taken a big hurdle. So that's one of those areas that I think is really, really key. The second one that we always look at, and that is a very big determinant of success. Again, it's not a guarantee, but if you don't have it, I can guarantee you it's not going to work, is or it's not going to scale. Are they coachable? It's the coachability, is how willing are they to listen, to learn, Or do they come in and they think that because they're so smart, they've got a PhD, whatever, they know everything already, and they stop listening and learning. So it's can they form a team, even if it's small? Are they coachable? They're the two essential bits. And then the rest is more of does this innovation fill a need? Have they specified that need enough? Have they done the customer insight work? Is that they think there's a need, or have they actually checked it and tested it? And how many potential customers have they spoken to? And do they really understand the need of those customers? So those things are probably a little bit more textbook, but the soft parts of it, like can they build a team and are they coachable? It is incredibly, incredibly important.
Mm. That totally makes sense. Um, what area of technology are you most interested by at the moment? You know, if you had three verticals of technology to make angel investments in over the next 5 years, uh, and you had to choose three different types of technology, what three verticals would they be in? And only hard science, deep tech for this question as well.
Yeah, I find that a very difficult one to answer because I don't know what's out there on the horizon. Because often these things pop up, and it's only when they're there and someone puts them in front of you, you go like, "Wow, this is amazing." But what I would say is personally, what we do here, and again, that's maybe a little bit because of my background. I like investing in technology that has at least a portion of hardware to it, because it's the hardware that builds um, the um, the resilience of the business. That's also why I feel quite comfortable with Gallagher. You can be very easily disrupted if you're a pure software play. You can be disrupted by two guys in a garage somewhere, you know, anywhere around the world that can, if it's just a software, you know, thing that you're building, you can be easily disrupted. It's a lot harder if you have to build a piece of hardware that has to be resilient, robust, cost effective, that has to, and that's something that we know really, really well. We've been doing it for 86 years now. I mean, we built hardware that can stand the animals on farm and the tractors driving over it, the watering grid, with 99% reliability. That is a lot harder to copy. So I love investing in something that's a lot more difficult to disrupt. But that also means that you need to make sure that whatever hardware you invest in is not going to be something that is possible to be disrupted for a non-hardware solution. Like if you, for example, have a weigh scale, you have a piece of kit. If you can replace that with um, purely camera weighing and you no longer need any hardware, obviously you need to watch out for that as well. So invest in hardware that
That can't be disrupted with bits.
yeah,
'Cause
yeah,
that's happened with a few, wearable, plays and stuff, right? Where, everything looked great and then, ultimately there's a new medium for it. It's kind of what's happening right now with LLMs and search, because potentially LLMs are a, superior way of searching, and over time, that may eat into the market share of, for example, a traditional Google
yeah.
search.
Yeah, I mean that's that we are building certain things on software applications for making it easier for our customers to design their own things on our website, so to know which bits of kit to buy. We were planning to hard code that in, but now with the AI agents, why would we hard code that in? We have, if we can just get the right AI agent in place that can learn, from all of the input we give it. We don't need to hard code anything. We just need to put a good AI agent in place that actually does the learning in the background, and that can answer some of those questions that customers may have. They just need to talk to it. Tell me how to do. What do I need to buy to build a 30-kilometer fence in that kind of environment? We don't need to build a piece of kit where the customer goes in and needs to type in 30 kilometers this is the landscape, these are the animals. They can, you know, they can just talk to an AI engine that does all of that in the background. And we don't even need to program the AI agent. We just need to give them all of the Q&As and all of the technical files, and the AI agent will do it for him. So the world is changing really rapidly, and that's also what we're discussing at the leadership team. All of the stuff that we've got in our roadmap that that we are planning to develop. Hey, let's look critically. Do we actually still need this with the rise of AI agents?
I mean, so I've had heated discussion actually on this podcast a while ago because I said that I made a comment saying, "Oh, well, I think that you can build $1 billion company with less than 10 people now,"
Yeah,
and that's something that we would like to do in our company.
yeah,
So there's a couple things around AI. One being that engineering time is going down dramatically due to this, but also with the advent of reasoning and how the AI models are now becoming far stronger with reasoning. I said it actually. I went on a startup. It was actually recorded at the podcast. It was recorded at the Ice House, and a couple of years ago. And I said, I think within the next 3 to 4 years, you could essentially have an investment team in your pocket. And we're probably about um, I would say 3 weeks away now from launching a multi-agent software investment management team that's been trained on three famous investors, and it's going to be running a public portfolio, communicating with each other to come to investment decisions. Now, it's a research project, and I actually don't. I'm not suggesting that it's going to have potentially superior returns. However, the fact that these agents can now interact with each other and reason with each other to come to decisions is something that's going to be really interesting to watch. And we're basically going to release it in essentially a Discord server, which is like Slack, and then people will be able to watch these agents communicate with each other as information comes in, and then making decisions. So they'll actually be able to watch these agents learn and grow and make these portfolio decisions, which I think is going to be really fascinating. Um,
it'll be fascinating. Yeah,
so,
yeah.
and it's all because there's a Twitter account that's actually done the same thing, not for investing, but it's basically this agent that is interacting with the real world or people tweeting at it, and it's kind of adapted and learned, and it's kind of taken on a world of its own. So it is going to be really interesting to see, and that's a super disinflationary and disruptive situation that obviously conglomerates have to deal with, and also something that startups can actually use to their advantage because
Yep.
you can essentially get for the price of whatever the compute is, you can kind of get extra resource that you would have never been able to get access to before.
Yeah, that's the biggest challenge also, as a, as the CE of this team, with this really rapidly changing environment. It is actually making making sure that people within the team see the opportunity that offers, making them see that work will be done differently. People in the team, it's not like we want to sack people or have less people. We'll just be able to get so much more work done with the people that we've got on the team. We'll be able to accelerate that. And it's up to us to actually embrace it, to see it as an opportunity, to not see it as a threat, to not kind of like, oh, this is I'm afraid of this. And that is actually the role of us as a leadership team, as it's he is getting our people excited about this and getting to embrace that. And that's one of those things that does keep me awake at night. How can I make sure that we act fast enough, that we're not being left behind? We have this scale. If we then amplify that with AI agents, imagine how fast we can go.
There's a number of aspects and tangents you can go from there, right? Like, we think that's why when I started the company we started, um, it was like, how do you now empower every single person that you engage with to build some sort of equity? Because at the end of the day, you know, selling time now is going to be kind of warped because you're basically competing against compute, and that compute is innately deflationary. So what does a career look like? Obviously, as parents, we're also thinking, what does a career look like? Um, so and it kind of gets to the stage where you're like, well, you have to try and own productive things or earn productive things. Um, and then I think actually ultimately what really wins out is relationships,
Yeah.
because the relationships can't be built necessarily through agents, but your relationships with your customers, your relationships with your partners, your business partners, and your different stakeholders are really going to be what drive success in the future. So those what was previously hard skills that were learnt and taught and revered will now be potentially soft skills and the ability to
Yep.
build strong relationships and be collaborative. And I think the natural inclination when you see a new technology like this is actually humans almost sometimes may want to regress inward because the thought of collaborating and expanding out becomes a threat.
Yeah.
Um, so it's a really, yeah, it must be really fascinating being in a large organization working out because you're at a different scale. I have maybe 6 people to worry about and think about how their role acts, whereas you have to think about many, many people
Yeah.
and how that impacts your organization, but also the individuals behind the organization, right?
And that's where the skill sets that we need are changing. I mean, we'll always need that logical, analytical thinking, but we also need people who can live in the gray, people who are happy with ambiguity, that they can navigate ambiguity. We don't. We will never have all the answers. We will never have all the information to make decisions. It's about that speed of decision making. It's. I'm not. I wouldn't call it following your gut, but it is being comfortable with living in the gray, not knowing what the outcome of some of those decisions will be, but making them anyway. Decisiveness, proactivity, creativity, people, relationships, as you say, all of these things are much more important than the hard being able to code something, because you can ask an agent to do that for you, to write that bit of code for you. So it's a completely different skill set that we need to encourage our kids also to develop.
Totally. So last 2 questions talking about kids then. So, one being, what are your thoughts on intergenerational wealth? And I would expand that out beyond just, wealth, but how do you set your kids up to and give them a framework, especially in an ever-changing world, to be successful and, kinda navigate, this? And obviously, did you and your, husband think about, "Okay, well, I do want to provide a certain level of certainty or wealth for the kids in order to give them the best chance possible."
Well, we've always said that, so we think we've always tried to teach the kids the value of money. That, um, w- and I mean, we've got enough. The kids have grown up without any issues. We've been able to, put them through good schools. We're paying for the university. That's our promise to them, is that they don't have a student loan when they finish. It's their job to do well, and to not, that they have to work hard. It's not like if they would just go and party, they can start all over again and try again. If they work hard, I promise that they will not have a student loan. That's what we give them as a start in their life. But in that as well, I mean, we give them an allowance for, like, they're studying in Europe, give them an allowance for their flat and for their food, and we don't make it too big. We want to make sure that they actually know the value of money. They've always worked. They've always, when I mean, study always comes first. So it's only when the study allows, they will work. Like the one who's doing medicine, she's not working. She's working really, really hard in her study. She's done really well. But in the holidays and things, and when they were younger, they need to know the value of money. We give them, you know, a start without any debt. We also have a trust where we've invested in a bit of property. We've got a few bits and pieces there. We hope that, and that's also forcing us to save and not spend everything you earn. It makes you a little bit more careful. And I hope that I will be able to help them during my lifetime, so that if they want to buy a house, I can help them to buy that house. I will expect them to pay me back for that loan. It's not going to be a gift. And if at the end of our life we haven't spent everything, my husband and I hope to be able to leave them something at that point, that maybe at that time in their life they can help their kids to set up. But I don't believe in a. I've always said, and my parents said that to me. You're only wealthy when you can live off your money and you don't have to live off your work. So as long as you rely on, we've got a good salary, we've got a good income, we don't, people could say you're wealthy. Yeah, but I'm still working for my money. You're only really truly wealthy if you can sit at home and the money comes in. Like in Belgium, you had the big estate owners and they have castles and they have, they don't have to work and they're sitting on, millions and millions of dollars in jewelry and things like that. That's the real wealthy. As long as you have to work for your money, you know, it's a different ball game than if you've got $100 million in the bank. So that's what I want to teach the kids, that there's value in working, and not to treat that money because you work hard for it, to treat it well, to use it well, spend it wisely, to invest it in the future, to help the next generation. As you say, I want to help the kids, more, to help them buy their first house if they would like me to. But again, it's not just gifting it. Make sure that they have to work. That's my view on it.